Hello everybody, today we're thinking out loud about COVID-19 together with our special guest Benjamin Boyrard. My name is John Olsen, my colleague here is
Almonte Leclerc.
This is ANO.
Welcome. John.
Mitchell, today we're not starting with the figures.
No.
Because one of many people now are saying, and we also did research, that the figures are not reflecting actually what is going on in truth. Actually, some of the figures are even outdated. So, and it's also time to speak out hope, because many people also they experience that they are tired from COVID-19.
Well, John, your point is very interesting. That the narrative of fear, the narrative of anxiety, it must stop. We need to bring hope. We need to bring objective truth. So we are looking for that, and that's why we have invited a very special guest to talk and to think out loud about objective truth. Welcome.
Oh, thank
Welcome,
you very
Benjamin.
much.
We will call each other by our names. That is what we agreed. Benjamin, you're an IT specialist, you're a thinker, you're an author, you're so much more than that. So what is your thoughts about what's going on today in our society?
Oh, well, first of all, there's a lot of chaos and misunderstanding, a lot of misinformation going around the world and related to COVID-19. First of all, people are scared. They are panicking because of the death rate, the infection rate. You have people that are focused about numbers, and that is creating the whole psychological fear among people. But then, on the other hand, you have a lot of question about the origin also of the virus.
So before you go to that, because you're also a thinker, what made you to start thinking about what is going on with this COVID-19? Was it about the figures? Was it about the facts? What made you to think, hey, I need to think this out, what is going on?
Well, it all started when some friends of mine in the US contacted me to help them program a computer model which would simulate how the virus would spread from one country to the other.
Yes.
And while putting that computer model together and making the first 2-3 runs, we noticed a lot of anomalies, both in the speed, the rate that the virus was spreading, and also the origin, where the virus was said to started. And that's when we began to, have a list of questions about this coronavirus.
So what kind of questions came on that list?
Well, the first thing we wanted to know, what was the exact time the virus began affecting human beings. In our first runs of the computer model, we noticed that the virus began to spread several months before the December month, which was the month that most news outlets stated that the virus began. And the second thing is we noticed that the spread of the virus was very unbalanced globally.
Yes.
So then we began to investigate to see what was the cause of all this disparity in information. The first thing we noticed is that the virus related to COVID-19, the news outlets said that it started in the region of Wuhan,
yes.
in China. And everything started with a group of people that began to complain about pneumonia and respiratory complications in the month of December. But then, to our amazement, when we began to search further in different sources, mostly Chinese source, we noticed that some people reported infection and respiratory complications from since the month of October So several months before the news began to state that the virus began.
Before you continue, Mr. Benjamin, because there's a lot of debate going on social media, and as soon as possible, it seems like people are there to stamp this as fake news. So what makes these facts from your research to withdraw that saying that this might be fake news?
Well, as a researcher, it's always important to go to the source, number one, and number two, you always have to double check your data. You verify it with other sources as well. And one of the things we did, we requested the documents. As you know, every university, every institution of research in the whole world, in every nation, every language, issue publications.
Yes.
This is a norm. And we requested to view technical publication that was issued by university in the Wuhan area. And there we discover some very interesting things. Yeah.
So you saw that this virus starts spreading already. Symptoms were already seen by people 2 months even before December.
That's correct.
So what does that lead you in your conclusion?
Well,
where does that lead you to?
Well, two things. First of all, the government, the infrastructure of information within China, the Chinese nation, has some disparities because the communication was not made in a timely manner. That's number one. Number two, we found that the value of people's lives was not measured up because it's important to know that every country in the world has to have a right, a responsibility that if something is going on, there's a public danger, the population has to be aware of that fact so that they can protect themselves. And we see that this was not the case. And even up until January, February, we saw that it took 3-4 months nearly before that the information began to, really record in the minds of the institutions globally and also into the World Health Organization, which only until February declared that this was a pandemic.
Wow. So we could say that the world was warned, but too late.
Was too late, and also ignored the severity of the spread of this virus.
Yes, because we're going to talk also about the severity of the spread of this virus, John and Benjamin. But the people who are watching now, they might be like, oh, really? Was this already happening as from October already spreading? And then the World Health Organization in February 2020 called out a pandemic. So that's November, December, January, February. It's kind of strange.
Well, there's a few reasons for this. First of all, in the first months, December and January, all the cases of infection was localized only in China.
Okay.
So for the World Health Organization to declare a virus a pandemic, it has to have a spread of infection at least in 90% of the nations across the world.
Okay, it has to do with a criteria before a pandemic can be called out, declared, right? Okay, so these criteria, then we could say, because we are pinpointing where the problem comes from, then we could say there is a problem in the criteria in one or the other way, or the criteria must be updated, or there is something else going on.
Yes.
But something must be going on.
Exactly. So what I'm hearing you asking is actually, is there somebody responsible? Is this a responsibility of the WHO not implementing the criteria sharp enough? Is this irresponsibility of governments? What are we looking at?
Well, it's a list of many things. First of all, I think that the information was not passed along in a timely fashion. If there's a virus that affects people, that infects people, human to human, you have a human to human transmission, and what you call the RO number. Now, the RO number, it's a number that's attributed to each form, each type of virus. The higher the R null number is, it's the more infectious the virus is. So, for example, a virus that has a R null number of 2 means that one person who's infected has the potential to infect 2 other persons, and then it follows that pattern. If you studied and analyzed the first initial research that was done on COVID-19 in China, they noticed that the R null number was relatively high compared to influenza virus, for example. And I find that this information should have been relayed very early to the World Health Organization, so that they in turn could have relayed that information to all the regional health institutions in Europe, in Africa, in America, so that measures could be taken earlier.
Okay, so now we have come to the measurements that could be taken on the matter of COVID-19. But there is something we are reading, we are hearing other critical thinkers that they are saying. For example, in Holland in 2017 and 2018, about 9,000 people died of the flu. But up till now, in Holland, there are not yet 6,000 people who have died of COVID-19. So the measurements and the panic that came out to the people, is it in proportion with the danger of COVID-19?
Well, that's a very good question, because that's one of the second things we notice when we run a computer model, that the numbers were not matching. Wow. And like in all computer models where you have a long list of equations, and into those equations you have to feed in data, those data have to be first analyzed and processed. For example, if you run a computer model, for example, on speed, and you take 10 average person that are running, and one of the input data that you have to input into the model gives you a number, for example, of 100 kilometers per hour, you can scratch that number out because you know for a fact that it's impossible for a person to run that speed.
Yes.
So that's called making qualifications, verification on the quality of those data before inputting into the model. Otherwise, the result, the output of your computer model will be wrong.
Yes.
And in analyzing those numbers, we noticed that on our diagrams, you would have like increased spikes and decrease of the number of cases, daily cases in various countries. So with my friends, we had a meeting online and we decided to wait, a few days to confirm all of that. And surprisingly, a few days after, we heard on the news, in different countries, that the numbers that are put on the internet, even taken from the official sources, health sources, for example, here in the Netherlands.
Yes. Or IFM.
Or from the CDC in the United States, that those numbers are wrong. No. Why? Because the computer model needs a timely data inflow. And if you look at a specific date,
yes,
the number that is posted on the news or on the sources, health sources or organization, they're always required to be lower than the real value counted. Now, why is that? The first problem is testing. Now, in all the countries, even include China, because this virus is relatively new, we had a major problem of testing. And the only way you can know exactly the number of people infected with this virus is through testing.
Yes.
So if you do not have enough tests to perform on your population, then you will not have a realistic number of the number of people infected. And therefore, to make plans and to take actions will be very difficult.
Yes, so from the get-go, we could say that when the World Health Organization proclaimed that there was a pandemic, there were already some activities about COVID-19 that were not followed out the right way. There were some mistakes made, and also with the models that were used to come about the measures that we have taken in society as 1.5 meter distance, staying home, etc. If the models are not giving the right output because the input is not right, then we can also question the measures that were taken. I think so.
I think so. I take every word you're saying. I want to make one step back because you're analyzing the data, and there's one point that is very sensitive, and that is the origin and the source, because there's also a lot of stories about the source and that it comes from, it originated from bat, or it has been transferred from animals to people. Animals and to people.
Yeah.
But your computer model, it pointed out something very sensitive. We're thinking out loud now at this moment. So what is it that your computer model showed?
Okay, the other thing that we found in running the computer model in the starting point of where the virus was set to start is looking at the source. Now, based on the information that the Chinese government issued, it says that the COVID-19, it's a group of belonging to the coronavirus family, originated from bats that lived in caves southwest of Wuhan. Now, how did they come to that conclusion? The laboratories dissected the genetic material of the virus, what's called the genome, and in the genome you can trace back parts of the gene of the virus, the genetic structure of the virus, and see where it originated, where's the likely possibility that it originated. And they found that there was a strong match between the genome of the virus in COVID-19 with the genome of similar coronavirus that coexist within bats. So that was their conclusion. Then our question was, okay, how is it possible that the virus would pass on from bat to another animal eventually, and then into a human? Now, in science, we call that a crossover.
Yes.
And what happened is there are times when a virus or any microorganism, in the phase of multiplying itself, you have a change of a gene or a protein in a genetic level of the genetic structure of that of the virus, and that's called a mutation. Now, mutation happens every day, and they are random. Some can result into something simple and not dangerous. Other mutations can lead to a more deadly outcome. Now, the question that we ask, and we are still researching at this point, is how the mutation caused that the virus that was existing into the body of bats was enabled to change to such point that it would be transferred to a human being.
Well, we have a news article here, Mr. Benjamin. My colleague John and I, we had a look in this article, and it's in Dutch, but it's about a virologist called Ron Fouché, and it happened in 2011 in the Netherlands, in a lab around the Erasmus ziekenhuis in Rotterdam, and where this professor did research and came also to a gain of function with what we know in Holland as vogelgriepvirus. It's a type of influenza. And the title is in Dutch Knutselen aan gevaarlijke virussen. And knutselen is like something like almost playing, modifying, playing with deadly viruses. And this virologist, Ron Fauché, through gain of function, he achieved that this deadly virus could infect people. So then we also have a quote here of Lord May. The work they are doing is absolutely crazy. The whole thing is exceedingly dangerous, said Lord May, the former president of the Royal Society and one-time chief science advisor to the UK government. Yes, there is a danger, but it's not arising from the viruses out there in the animals. It's arising from the labs of grossly ambitious people. What do you think about this?
Yeah, that is something that is very relevant today. Something that most people do not know or not aware of is that across the globe there are just a handful of high-tech biological laboratories, and in these institutions, which are classified in 4 levels, you have L1, which is a simple laboratory, for example, in a university,
Yes.
where you study microbiology. You go and you study simple virus that are not deadly, of course, up to L4, which is the highest level. And in those L4 laboratory, scientists do research on virus systems like anthrax, like Ebola, very deadly viruses. And it just happened coincidentally that one of these type of institutions, L4 laboratory, exists in the Wuhan area. And as my friends and I, we requested a technical document from the institution of Wuhan. We went through page by page, looking at some of the recent researches they have conducted. And we noticed that in 2019, a team of microbiologists did what we call a chimera of a coronavirus. Now, a chimera is a new type of species where you merge the DNA of several types of organism into one. And they succeeded. So the question now, what we have in most countries now, which are pressuring China to investigate the origin of this virus, is to know what really happened. Did it originated in the laboratory or from bats that lived in caves, as was previously stated in the news?
So the question is this man-made or is it natural, by natural cause? And many facts, they point out that it's man-made. One of the details, Mitchell, I want to share at this table is that one of the reasons this laboratory of 4 called laboratories are doing this research is because they want to control these viruses in case, so when it breaks out, they can handle it, or they know what to do. But in the same way, it's now a pandemic, and these viruses, when it's developed in a laboratory, somebody owns it, and they can register for owning it. How you call that?
Patent.
Patent. They can. And when you do the research, the match, you see many of these patents, they are leading to a few people. Did you heard about this?
Yes, that's in our investigation. We noticed that, again, coincidentally, most of the patents were withheld by a few groups of big pharmaceutical laboratories, and also top leaders, one which is also in the IT world.
Okay, so this is getting very interesting, but always the clock is against us. So we're going to wrap it up, as they say. So today with our guest, Mr. Benjamin, we were looking at the beginning of this COVID pandemic, and according to research done by Benjamin and his friends, it's highly likely that in October already there were some signs of the developing of this COVID. After that, you went on and you talked also about a transmission from animals to human. You also talked about the models that were used, the input and the output, and how that was wrong. So the origin, the models, the transmission from animal to people, and afterwards also you talked about the labs, the level of labs, L1 till L4, and then we got also, to some organizations that they want the patent, some IT people who have certain benefits from that. So we are just giving a summary, right? And before we go, do you want to tell something to the normal people who are listening, normal people, everyday people, like what is the time we are living in right now? And what can we expect to come to an end?
Well, the time we are living in, of course, is marked by a lot of chaos. And like I always tell my family, you know, when there is a storm, a hurricane, and you're in the midst of that storm, you know, the wind is blowing, everything is dark, the seas are raging, you don't know which way to turn, actually, for safety, which is relevant to what we are experiencing now. We do not know where to go to be safe. You know, you always have to look up one place, and that's up. When you're in the center of the storm and you look up, then you see the blue sky, and there's peace. And that's what the last word I would like to for our viewers to remain with. Just focus on the person who's above, and you will have peace in the midst of the storm.
So these are the words from Mr. Benjamin Boyrard. People at home, you watching, we are sharing thoughts today about the development of COVID-19. And we'd like to know what you think about it. Is this virus man-made, or did it occur? Did it develop from bats? What is the state of today? And with the last word of Mr. Boyrard, where is your hope? And we always say, don't panic, don't fear, because fear is a bad starting point. But have hope. Have hope for the day of tomorrow, because there's someone looking after you. My name is Jan Olsen.
Almonte, Leclerc.
This is ANO.